But so it came completely out of the blue, and she obviously was very, very angry about the situation. But interestingly enough, a lot of people were sort of moving her out of the way, as though they were slightly embarrassed. Not that Nigerians do embarrassment, I don't think, do they? Perhaps you do, but I didn't see it obviously manifest. But there was an awkwardness and a feeling that she shouldn't be bothering us.
It was passion, and I think Yorubas are passionate people. I think you felt that passion throughout.
The Yoruba, and they're the southern.
Yeah, careful, there's a lot of Yorubas in here.
Love you. And then we'll get on to this later, but they're in the way they behave and their attitudes like very different from the Hausa in the north.
And you tell me what you felt the difference was, because they are very different. I would say they're very different. I think people in here would say they're very different. But what did you feel the difference was between the north and the south?
Well, the Hausa seemed quieter, more wrapped up in their own sort of worlds, less animated somehow. Maybe it's the heat or whatever, but I mean, and quieter, just a little more sort of inside themselves rather than the Yoruba, who just everything was out there. You know, you had to get everything you were thinking about out of your system, and that was, which I love that actually. It was a great surprise to me how refreshing it felt to be there. And you know, in England where we're so sort of deferential and careful about how we ask for things, so excuse me, couldn't you possibly pass another cucumber sandwich? Nigerians don't talk like that. They say, hey man, what are you doing eating that? No, they don't say that. They would be very vocal about everything. And it was great. So straight away you got to the point of whatever you wanted to ask somebody.
Yeah.
And also very articulate, lots to say.
That was that interesting and really funny exchange when you were on Makoko Island and you were getting into the boat, because although to an outsider when you first look you think people are arguing, that's just the way you can see that actually they're smiling.
Yes.
They're not arguing, they're just, it's banter.
Yeah, well, a lot of long poles being swung around and all that, but no, I could tell, and that exactly what you say, the banter, once you realise it's that, it's terribly liberating for a sort of uptight Englishman.
And tell me about Makoko Island, because you've travelled, you've been to many places, I would say, and gone into places that even as a Nigerian, I haven't done. I mean, I haven't been into Makoko Island, of course everyone knows where it is.
But that's interesting, because I can back the question back to you, why would you go there, particularly? I mean, I mean, 200,000 people there, all living on the poverty line. It's very tough. I don't feel there's any reason for other Nigerians to go there.
But maybe for a reality check. What did you feel when you were there? Was it a reality check? You a reminder that people are this well off? Yeah, but I mean, you know, again, I didn't feel these are poor people who are also passive and resentful. They're getting on with life. I mean, it was kind of put on slight filters on your spectacles. You could be in Venice, you know. It's basically nice canals there, and going on. They have boats that look like gondolas, and they're things and all that. And then you look again, and you realise these are just sort of wooden shacks made of bits of driftwood. They're not the palaces of the Grand Canal. But there was something of the same feeling of people living on the water, and very skillfully guiding their boats through, very elegantly. They're wonderful movers and all that. But I suppose it's only really comes to the full impact of what Makoko is like is when you go to the school. And I mean, there's sort of, I think there are 2 schools, something like that, in the whole of Makoko, and a lot of children who just won't be going to school at all. Yet you see the pictures there, and the eagerness in their eyes. They're absolutely jam-packed in their school sizes, wouldn't be allowed in this country sort of thing. And they're just there because they want to be in school, they want to learn, they've got their uniform. And they were terrific when I was burbling on about they know the value of education.
Yeah.
And they liked you as a teacher. I always do my teacher bit. That's also, whenever I go to these places, I turn up in the school. In North Korea was the earliest one. Yeah, they also. Where am I from? I'm from England. Yeah. Do you know England? Yes. Who do you know in England? Yeah. You know the Queen? No. They can't. Yeah. It's not that. If they don't know the Queen, they're not going to know sort of Madagascar.
So you went from the cocoa, that was such a contrast to go from
Yeah.
there to the nightclubs.
Yeah.
You seem to be getting on very well with that young lady.
She was a jolly, nice person and good fun. I mean, you either get on, you get on with people in Nigeria very quickly. They just do. They don't say, oh, you know, you're an interesting person or something like that. It's just there and the way they behave, the body language. And she was quite interesting because at the beginning she was a little bit sort of frazzled from a very busy day on the music business and all that. And a bit weary. And then just after, it didn't take more than about 3 or 4 minutes before she snapped into this, great to see you, I'm going to tell you all these wonderful things. And we were drinking, as you could see, not heavily, but...
A good cocktail.
Yeah, as a Negroni or something like that, very well mixed cocktail. But she was, I mean, again, something I found throughout Nigeria, although she was really jolly and friendly and jokey, there was, you know, when she starts talking about the country, the situation in the country, she seemed to have great reservations, and a lot of people did. And I thought it was at least healthy that the people of Nigeria themselves are the ones who are criticising Nigeria more than anybody else. And she certainly was like that.
And I know in your travel programmes you make a really conscious effort, and you did in this one as well, to talk to people from the country rather than the expats.
Oh yeah,
Talk them
yeah.
to Nigeria.
Never talk to expats.
Yeah.
Worse. They are a little bit because they're England doubled. You know, they've gone abroad. Because they're in a strange place, they either absorb the place, or else they become actually doubly English in order to sort of preserve whatever is Englishness. But no, obviously the whole point is to talk to people in the country. And I mean, North Korea, it was very difficult to talk to anybody, but it did mean that the few conversations we had in North Korea opened the door just a little bit. So there was a kind of tension there. I think we broke through on 2 occasions. In Iraq was the same team were with me in Iraq, and there it was a little easier in certain parts of Iraq. Southern Iraq, no one really wanted to talk to us at all. So to get to Nigeria and find that people not only want to talk but they speak English, that was great and gave a much richer dimension to the journey. Really
And
did.
they're telling their own stories in their own words.
Yeah,
so.
yes, yeah. I mean, they're not dissembling, they're not trying to pretend, you know, that they're saying something but meaning something else. It didn't seem to be a huge amount of irony there. You say what you want to say, and you say it directly, and that kind of directness I found refreshing.
And no sort of deference because you were an because you were a white man. You think they were very honest with you and very straightforward.
Yeah, and they looked after me quite well. They thought this old bloke is completely lost. He's in this area with a boat, you know, doesn't know where he's going. But they kind of looked after me in the end. Not too obviously, but they wanted to make sure that I was okay. But it reminded me a little bit, yes, of Ibo when we filmed in Ethiopia. We went to the Blue Nile Falls, and some children from the local village were guides taking us a mile or so from the road, the village, to the falls themselves, which were quite spectacular. And there's a lot of fighting between the children, and I heard one of them grab my arm and say, "No, he's my foreigner." So, they were looking after me. He's their foreigner.
So from there you went on to Badagry,
Mm.
a very emotional place for
Yeah.
Nigerians.
Yes.
And I could feel that you understood that emotion while you were there.
Yeah, well, I mean, the lady I was with, she was very vocal. She knew an awful lot about the slave trade and talked about it very well. So there was no getting away from what she was telling me, nor did I particularly, want to get away. I know a
certain amount about the slave trade, and I filmed in Senegal too, where the same sort of area people left. But it was the scale really of the departures. The slaves were taken from that beach in Nigeria, something like 3 million over 200 years. I mean, absolutely stunning. And also, I think it was just the contrast between the beauty of the beach. I mean, that would be on brochures anywhere else in the world. It's a nice, beautiful beach, lovely, big palm trees. You can see there, all the sand and everything. And yet, it had been a sort of terrible, terrible trading ground for the worst kind of oppression. So that made me feel, I felt a bit uncomfortable there, like I said, uncomfortable. And you try and take it in and kind of put yourself in the place of those people who are being driven along. And as she described them, they're almost senseless by the end, really.
Yeah.
It must be just treated like zombies. So there was a great brutality.
Yeah, I stood on that beach myself actually, and I'm
Yeah.
sure many other people in Nigerians here have as well. And you're right, it's that contrast between the beauty of it, because it is a beautiful
Yeah.
beach, isn't
Yes. I mean,
what happened?
I remember, it reminded me of, when I was a young teenager and all that, and we used to go to Suffolk and holidays there, and you would go through a sort of landscape a bit like that, small bushes and heathland, and once you came to the sea, you'd be running. You really want to get there fast. That's what I wanted, into the sea. And this time I was just moving more slowly, and knowing, what I was going to see was, well, what they said, the point of no return.
It was very important to include that in the film.
Yes, yeah. Well, we discussed this with Neil, my directors there, and generally felt you've got to confront this, and there's no way of avoiding it, nor would we want to avoid it. At the same time, you've just got to sort of, you can't change anything now. It happened, and you've just got to somehow admit that it happened, talk about what happened, and make a mark of it.
I think the thing that struck me, I've been lucky enough, I've seen two and have read about the third one, is that even as a Nigerian, I realised that you have managed to go to more places in Nigeria than I have in my 6 years. I mean, you've had amazing access.
Well, really? Well, you say that.
Yeah,
You would know.
absolutely,
And what sort of places
incredible
would you
access.
not have
I mean,
been
for
to?
one, you've been on that new railroad, so
Yes.
the train you've been
Yeah,
down,
yeah.
which is something I still haven't done.
Yeah,
So, and what
yeah.
was that like?
Well, that was a bit anonymous actually, because it wasn't really, apart from the fact it was painted very, wonderful sort of surreal painting on the coaches, but actually on it, it was fairly quiet. Buying the ticket was a great experience, which is I think in the next programme.
Yeah.
Because you're not allowed to reserve seats or buy tickets to actually get there, so it's actually catering for chaos which takes place, and then there's scanners to put luggage through, and the scanners don't work all the time. People just avoid. It's absolute chaos. When you get on the train, it's quite well organised. The train is built by the Chinese,
Yeah.
sort of the railway
Yeah.
and the stations.
And all the stations.
Yes, exactly. So that was the Chinese influence, which seems quite strong in Nigeria. And infrastructure, is that right?
It is, yeah, getting stronger.
Yeah.
I'm sure we'll have some questions about that later on, maybe. And just to stand up, could we talk a little bit about the second series of Congo? I know people haven't seen it, but there are things in there like the boxing. Just
Yes.
if you could paint a picture for people here of that before we get to you meeting the Emir, the boxing. Which
Yes.
I actually rewound that and watched that again. That was incredible.
Yeah, Dembe boxing, which is it's kind of bare knuckle boxing, except that on one hand they have a sort of a bandage, or they have some fabric which is then wrapped around, and so you've got it's your hand. One hand becomes a club, really, bulging club, and that's the one which they hit with. The other one is just to manoeuvre you around and get your position, but you hit with this hand there, and music plays as there's a band there, very noisy, sort of urging people on. They're all having a smoke anyway, so you know, it's kind of a strange situation. But it is something that's, I think it's traditional, this kind of boxing. And it was very much where we went in Kano. It was supplied there by the local authorities to bring younger children, give kids something to do. And it is there was a discipline to it. You're trained, and there are moves you can make and moves you are not allowed to make. So it seemed a way of getting the younger sort of unemployed people in Kano on the streets.
Much the way that boxing.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
And I've seen it in many places. I've seen it in Brazil, particularly in some of the favelas there in Brazil. Exactly the same sort of thing, because these kids are brought up fighting, you know, so they've got certain instinct to fight. But if you can get them to use the fighting creatively and make something out of the fighting and have rules and all that, then you know it gives them some sense of self-worth. That's the idea of it. Yeah. But it's a kind of wild thing to watch.
It was pretty wild.
Yeah.
I watched it twice and went back.
Really?
Oh my God, that was pretty crazy.
Have you ever seen it?
Never before, and that's what I mean, that you've got to see things like that.
Yeah.
But you arrive in Kano, you're treated like a king, really, aren't you? You get there, you and the crew.
Yes.
You have this wonderful welcome.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they said, well, the emir has agreed to see you. I didn't realise they'd put on what they call a static durbar, which is a durbar where the horsemen don't gallop for miles and fire arrows and all that. But they're all in the courtyard. I was like sort of a king. Yes, I had to sort of, you know, have a look at all the horses and nod and all that they presented to me. And I realised I got it. You know, I just wasn't. It wasn't quite right. I was wearing pretty much what I'm wearing now. It was just a sort of denim shirt and all that, and they were all in these glorious outfits.
Beautiful.
And that's something that I felt very strongly about Nigeria, is the colourfulness of the way everybody dresses. I mean, at every level, however poor you are, everyone's got wearing a fabric which you will not see replicated anywhere else. Is it like that?
Well, it's interesting. I don't want to go off the subject, but we've got the Queen of Ife.
Oh, really?
Yes, we should have thought
Oh,
that.
right.
We have the Queen of Ife.
Oh, right.
Who is actually the Queen in
Your Highness, yes.
She is your Royal Highness.
Wonderful, Your Royal Highness. You see what I mean? Just marvellous. Wonderfully worn. Such dignity.
It has this real interest
Yeah.
in fabric and material. Maybe we'll ask a question later on. We'll get you to
Yeah.
later. But yeah, the flamboyance of those outfits.
Yes.
Just amazing.
Yeah, everyone trying to fit slightly out in the horsemanship, and then these rather strange sort of. This is an area about the life in Nigeria I didn't really get time to go into, but the kind of mystical side of it, you know, what it means to have nails through your tongue when you're only 15 and all that, and men sawing their heads, drawing lines over their heads, alligators.
But you know what it made me think of was the sort of the court of King James, whatever, you know, that's
Really?
the sort
Yeah.
of thing that
Yes,
was
it
going
was.
on. wasn't
Yes.
It?
It seemed
it's
quite
a-
feudal, but I mean, you know, in a little bit of English country life, and I mean, but we didn't have live alligators.
No, maybe not.
Running around the place. So I was very interested. I'd like to know a little bit more about the significance of that group.
Yeah.
You could see the horsemen were there, and there were groups of people in scarlet outfits who were hunters. They all came along. So it was feudal in that way, but that the other side made me, you know, the self-mutilation sort of mime, if
Yes.
it was a mime.
Yeah.
That made me quite interested. How much of that is in the Nigerian character? You can
Well, it's
tell
in the
me.
history. It's in the history.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
Yes, I suppose, you know, that traditionally, all these things go back not
Yeah.
hundreds of years, but thousands of years, and it's entertainment for within the king's
Yeah.
court. I imagine.
But the whole, I mean, a long time ago I read Ben Oakley's wonderful book, Family Shrine.
Yeah.
And that's all about animism and, you know, the spirits who live in the forest and all that.
Yeah.
I mean, that's something we don't have anymore, really.
Yeah. You did go to it's the million-person church. I know there were about 100,000 people in one congregation.
Yeah.
So describe that. I mean, the church is such a central part
Yes.
of being Nigerian,
Yeah.
and especially if you're Yoruba. So
Yeah.
what did that feel like to be in that church with all those people?
Well, the church is in a sort of city. It's called Redemption City, where people come and live. They have shops, they have banks, they have garages, and all that. And then at the end of the day, up at the top of the hill, there's this enormous. They're sheds, really. There's no sides to them. It's just lots of roofs, like you might find in cattle markets. And they're no more luxurious than that. But they stretch for 2 kilometres, and they can get 3 million people in there at any one time. I don't know if they've ever got 3 million people in for a service. But the night we went there, it was quite a crowd. There were probably 100,000 people or something like that, and they all gathered together. And there were a lot of women of a certain age, middle-aged women and all that. And there was a woman who was wonderfully, I just said to her, you going along? You know, do you come to this regularly? She said, yes, I come to, of course, it's every time because I was healed. I have a bad leg and I was healed. She showed me immediately her leg. There was some nasty gash there. And she said, you know, I couldn't walk, but now I can walk. And then she said, and I can jump. And she jumps up and down, you know, kind of, I can jump. And she goes and all that. So again, it was very much the Nigerian openness. Everybody's celebrating together. Nothing's embarrassing. You can roll on the floor if you want to, and you know, sing along. Feel the spirit. Yeah, it's all the spirit guidance. I mean, yeah. Well, it's all very orchestrated in the sense that there's this huge, sort of wonderful sound system, and there's someone talking to it all the time. You know, break down the wall, break down the wall, blah, and it's so you can see people being sort of roused to this pitch of hysteria. Then the music plays, and it's. I mean, you're in a shed. There's nothing else to do. Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's very. It's just that the numbers doing it at the same time. I mean, by the end, I just went along with it. You know, I wasn't rolling on the floor or anything like that. But I was feeling this colossal energy, and that's, as I say, that's religion. That's the evangelical spirit, and it just interested me about Nigerian politics. Whether that goes, that's very important. Because someone said, you know, the president's wife was going to be at the service that night, and quite a lot of politicians came along. So it wasn't just ladies who could jump. There were politicians, there were quite powerful people there. So I'm sure that the politics, the economy, whatever, however Nigeria works, this religion is very much in the heart of it.
The churches, I think people will ask you, well, who's your father, what does your father do, which church do you go to?
Yeah.
I don't think I'm exaggerating if someone's saying yes.
Yeah. Do you
Church
go to
is a
church?
very, I do go to church.
Yeah.
We're not here to talk about me.
It's so much more interesting because you're Nigerian. Yeah.
Nigerian, but
Yeah.
no, you're much more interesting than I am.
No, I'm not.
So you're not. No,
Single hand.
Of all the states, so you went from, you did 200 miles more or less down the country. Which state, hundreds of miles, which state would you say has stuck in your mind the most? Exclude Lagos, because we know that. Exclude
Yes.
Lagos.
Well, Kano in the north, as we've said, because it's so different, and also it had a very, very long history. You could tell that was at the heart of the Emir's celebrations. It was very much history and tradition, which didn't seem to, I didn't see much of in Lagos, which is all about new things, new places, bigger buildings and all that. So I'm very fond of Kano. I've got nice memories of it.
Abuja?
Abuja, yeah, Abuja, the capital, that worked really well. I mean, the roads weren't potholed, and the verges had been swept, and people get their gardens and all that. Because it's a capital city, really, designed by Americans, I believe.
And it's where all the politicians.
Where the politicians are there, so it's a bit, neutral as far as I was concerned. But anyway, it was comfortable there. But I like places that are a bit more, that are different and are interesting and exciting, and unlike home.
Yeah.
So I quite liked.
You like things going wrong, don't you? I'm thinking of
Up
the,
to a point.
your truck or your Jeep getting
Oh,
pulled
yes,
in the road. I mean,
yes.
just tell the audience about that. That's
Yes, there is a sequence. And the roads got very, very bad towards as we were going south of Abuja, and not just potholes. There were kind of ponds. It was like sort of little lagoons, and these huge trucks, which always worried me because they were stranded like great beached whales, half tilted over to the side. No one was coming to tow them out or anything like that. And we were saying, "Oh, lucky us!" But then we got stuck, and a van with all our gear in just got stuck in the mud. And you saw, I think there's a little clip in the trailer there of us trying to tow it out, equivalent of a pair of man's braces. I mean, it's so obvious it was going to break. It was just a question of how quickly it would break. Sometimes break even before they tied it onto the truck. That wasn't going to work. And we were quite stuck, and it was also getting towards the end of the day. And in that part of the world, the security people get very worried because there are bandits on the roads, there are people who are going to rob you and all that sort of thing as soon as it gets dark. And in the end, the wonderful thing was a lot of children had come out of the village, and in the end, they were the ones who got the van out. They all pushed it. You know, there must have been about 20 kids all pushing it out, and it was wonderful. Yeah, we all cheered at the end. I must have thought idiots.
I was does anyone in the audience want to? I'm hogging this conversation. Do we have any questions in the audience? If you put your hand up, then we'll get a mic to you, and I